I've got 5 IEMs to share with you this week, and they all range between $170 and $220. Each model here has really strong marketing claims about its value and its benefits, but I wanted to know which one was actually the best. And so I've measured and compared each of these across multiple genres, across multiple source devices, to get a handle on how each one sounds and share that with you so you can make an informed decision. And in the end, I'll tell you how my favourites here compare to a couple of other favourites in the same sort of price range, specifically the 7Hz Timeless and the T-Audio Elixir. Plus, I'm continuing to build my IEM tier list, so I'm going to be giving you my tier rankings for each of these at the end as well. So there's lots and lots to watch out for and to stick with me through this process. If you've just arrived here without seeing my previous videos in this series on the SIMGOT EA1000 and the Hydeas MP145, you might want to go and check out those first. There's links in the description down below. But at the same time, you don't necessarily have to. All you really need to know is that we're talking about the Hydeas MS3 today, and I'll be comparing the Hydeas 3 with the winner of my comparison from those previous 2 videos. Now clearly later on in this video, I'm going to spoil which one the winner was by talking about it, but for now I'll keep it spoiler free in case you want to use the links in the description down below to go back and check out the videos on the SIMGOT EA1000 or the Hydeas MP145. But for now, let's dive in and talk about the Hydeas MS3. The MS3 here was sent to me by Hydeas, so thank you very much to them. And these retail for $170. Inside each of these beautiful shells, we're going to find a single dynamic driver and a pair of balanced armatures. That brings the specs of these in at 18 ohms and 112 decibel sensitivity. And just like the aforementioned MP145 from Hydeas, these also have 3 different tuning nozzles. Those tuning nozzles come in labelled as vocal, balanced and bass. And so of course I'll go through and talk about what each of them looks like and sounds like, looks like from a graph point of view, and how it sounds, and then I'll choose my favourite of the nozzles and put that up against the winner of the previous 2 videos. Before we get there though, I should mention a couple of things about the design, the fit and the finish, and that's to say that there's really nothing to say about the MS3 because they're great. There's no negatives, there's no drawbacks, there's no hey you've got to be aware of this, they're just fantastic. You get a bunch of different tips, you get this lovely cable, everything about them just looks and feels very premium. And so without any further ado, I think we should just start talking about how they sound. As I said, there's 3 different tuning nozzles to talk about, and so we're going to start with whichever one was fitted, work our way through, I'll share what I think was the best for me, and which ones other people might like for different reasons. All testing for all of these videos was done with the Chord Mojo 2 and the Chord Poly, and using Final Audio E-Type tips, so I had a consistent fit and seal and general performance of the IEMs. One of the tracks that I used for this testing was Bertha, I think it's Bertha, I'm not sure, by Jon Batiste. And the tips that I happened to start off listening to were the red tips on the MS3. Straight away, the sound from them was very nice, clean, crisp, not overly crisp in terms of analytical, but it had a good sense of clarity to it. I think overall the tonality was quite balanced, but it did tilt a little bit into the treble for me. And that means that I can see the red tips getting a little tiny bit fatiguing if you're anything like me. Now we've all got different sensitivities and frequencies that get boosted by the anatomy of our ear canals, so your mileage may vary, but I definitely felt like the red nozzles were just teetering a little bit too far towards treble and fatigue for me. The sense of separation and imaging from the MS3s was really strong. I don't know yet if it's going to match something like the MP145, which was fantastic in that area, but it did start off sounding pretty good just in isolation. Something else that really stood out to me at this point was the fact that these are a very coherent sounding IEM. For a hybrid design using 3 different drivers, you don't get any sense of different drivers doing things at different times. Everything was placed in the image where it should be. Nothing kind of popped out of space in an artificial way. There were no frequencies that were pushed too far forward or too far back. It was a really lovely coherent sound. Listening to this track by Jon Batiste, I did find that the kick bass from the MS3 sounded punchy and solid, or actually it's the kick bass from the track being played through the MS3s, that sounded punchy and solid, but it's worth noting that I think the bass is kind of a secondary tuning compared to the mid-range and treble from these. They're not lean on the bass, they're not lacking bass, and keep in mind that I'm someone that tends to lean a little bit towards warmth. These didn't leave me wanting bass at all, but they're not a bass-forward IEM, at least with the red nozzles. Moving over then to the silver nozzles, and I immediately got a greater sense of space and separation in the sound with these. There's both a piano and a tuba in this test track, and what I found was that when I went to the silver nozzles, they felt like they were now in different places in space. With the red nozzles on, it was a little bit like kind of the tuba was on top of the piano, but not so with the silver nozzles. It did help to separate things out better. Looking at the graph, you'd probably think that the silver nozzles would be a more treble-oriented sound, but I actually didn't hear them that way, and I even went to the trouble of going and rechecking, retesting them, because I wasn't sure if I'd measured them wrong, if maybe their tips or the nozzles hadn't quite connected properly. But when I rechecked, I got exactly the same measurement again, and so I think it's going to come down to something about how the nozzles are actually damping the sound. Maybe there's some extra resonance or turbulence or something in the treble from the red nozzle compared to the silver nozzle, because even though it graphs as having a bit more treble, the treble doesn't feel over-enhanced or pushed too far forwards with the silver nozzles in place. It could also be that the treble peaks from the silver nozzles fall in some spots that I'm not personally sensitive to, so do take that into account as well. The beauty of it is if you buy a pair of these, you can switch the nozzles yourself and work out which one you like. Going back and forth between the silver and the red nozzles definitely have kind of a thicker sound to them. It's not a rich or heavy or warm sound, but everything sounds thicker. It's like everything's got a bit more weight to it, and not necessarily in a good way. It sort of congests the soundstage a bit, it prevents that wonderful sense of separation and clarity that I think the silver nozzles have. And so I do enjoy both nozzles, both of them are fine, but I think the silver takes the win for me. That then moves us over to the rose gold nozzles, and the rose gold and the silver are very, very similar sounding. And indeed, the only thing that I really felt like I was hearing was a little bit more smoothness from the rose gold nozzles. They just took a little bit of edge or a little bit of energy out of the treble, and whilst that probably cost a tiny bit of separation and clarity in the sound, it made it a better and an easier overall listen for me. As I said, the difference is very, very small. The reduction in things like separation and clarity are tiny, and I would happily make that trade for the slightly smoother and easier to listen to experience. And so the silver and the rose gold nozzles were both great for me on the MS3, the red nozzles not so much, but it's the rose gold that I ultimately chose as my favourite and then took that forward into my comparison with, and this is a spoiler alert, if you don't want to find out who's going to win between the EA1000 and the MP145, go watch the MP145 video first, because I'm now going to move on and compare the MS3s here with the Hydeas MP145. With the MP145, my favourite nozzle there was the silver one. With the MS3s, it's the gold, and I put them head to head. These two IEMs have very different tunings. The MP145 is a richer, smoother, fuller sounding IEM, whereas the MS3 is a bit more detail oriented, a bit more sort of technical, clarity oriented. I feel like the MP145 has a bit more presence to its sound overall, but it doesn't get forceful in the lower registers, it doesn't overdo things down low, it's just got a sense of extra weight, extra body to the sound, and I really enjoy that about them. Thinking about the sense of space they produce, and this was one of the strong points of the MP145, I feel like both the MS3 and the MP145 produce a wonderful sense of space overall, both depth and width. The MP145 produces a slightly deeper soundstage, but I feel like the MS3 maybe separates sounds just a little bit more. And so that's going to come down to what you prefer, what you value more. Of course, tonality is going to be a part of it too. But so far, both of these are coming out as really strong contenders. And so for me, this is another one, just like the MP145 and the EA1000, this is another one that was really hard for me to split. And for me, what it came down to was that the MS3, even with my favourite rose gold nozzles on there, I feel like it was always just teetering a bit too close to fatigue. With the wrong track or the wrong source, these were going to get just a little bit too harsh for me. Whereas the MP145, again, like I said in the last video, I could listen to for hours and hours on end, thoroughly enjoy them. They had plenty of technicality and clarity, but they were smooth and easy to enjoy as well. And so the MP145 once again wins by a very small margin, so it's going to carry through into the next video to see if it can run the table and take the win. If you want to follow the MP145s on their journey to try to claim victory, make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you can stay tuned for the next video where they go up against the ICO OH10S. For now though, if you've liked this video, please hit the like button, and in the meantime I'll leave you to the music, so happy listening and I'll see you here next time on Passion for Sound.